Every single week, you perform a quiet ritual of self-preservation without even thinking about it. You take a pair of steel clippers to your fingers, or you sit in a barber's chair, watching pieces of yourself fall to the floor. It feels like basic hygiene, a minor chore to keep up appearances. But what if you just stopped? What if you locked the scissors away, threw the clippers in the trash, and let nature take complete control? If you enjoy learning how your body, your mind, and the world really work, subscribe now, because this channel breaks down complex things in simple ways. Within just a few months of abandoning this routine, your body would transform from a familiar friend into a highly challenging physical prison. The line between grooming and survival is much thinner than you think, and crossing it changes everything about how you interact with the world. To understand this transformation, we have to look past the surface of what hair and nails actually are. Most people view them as living parts of the body, like skin or muscle, but they are actually dead tissue. Your body expends a massive amount of daily energy, pushing out columns of a hardened protein called keratin. This protein is incredibly durable, designed by evolution to protect your sensitive fingertips and insulate your skull. We tend to think that if we stop cutting them, they will just grow into a slightly longer, wilder version of what we see in the mirror today. But that is the first major misconception. Without human intervention, the natural mechanics of growth completely break down, turning these protective tools into active liabilities. Think of your fingernails as a slow-moving conveyor belt that never turns off. On average, they grow about 3.5 millimeters every single month. Within the first 90 days of your experiment, your nails will extend past your fingertips and begin to curve downward. This happens because the nail bed is curved, forcing the dead keratin to follow the contour of your finger. But here's where it gets interesting. Once the nails clear the edge of your skin, they lose their structural support. They do not just grow straight out like claws. They begin to twist, curl, and spiral inward toward your palms. By the end of year one, simple tasks like typing on a keyboard, turning a doorknob, or buttoning a shirt become agonizingly difficult. You are no longer using the pads of your fingers to touch the world. You are navigating through a shield of brittle, curved armor. Historically, we have seen this extreme growth in specific cultural contexts. In ancient China, noblemen would intentionally grow their nails to absurd lengths to prove a point. It was a status symbol that loudly declared to the world that they were too wealthy to ever perform manual labor. But for a modern person, this lack of labor creates a dangerous trap. The underside of a long nail is a dark, moist, and oxygen-deprived environment. It becomes a perfect breeding ground for fungi and bacteria, turning your hands into a biological hazard zone. While your hands are transforming, your feet are experiencing a much more painful reality. Toenails grow at about a third of the speed of fingernails, but they grow inside a confined space, and this is where most people get it wrong. They assume long toenails just puncture the front of your socks. In reality, the constant pressure of your shoes forces the growing nails back into the surrounding flesh. Within 6 months, you would develop severe ingrown toenails on almost every digit. The skin becomes inflamed, infected, and highly sensitive to the slightest touch. Walking shifts from an unconscious movement to a calculated exercise in pain management, forcing you to alter your gait or abandon shoes altogether. But that is only half the story. While your extremities are curling into spirals, the hair on your head is staging its own quiet revolution. On average, human hair grows about 6 inches per year. If you leave it entirely untouched, it does not just become a beautiful flowing mane. Without a brush, a comb, or a pair of shears, your hair begins to do what all fibers do when left to friction and movement. It mats. Every time your head rubs against a pillow or the wind blows, individual strands twist around one another. Within 2 years, your hair will form a dense, solid cloak of felted fibers. This is not just a cosmetic change. A heavy mass of matted hair traps, sweat sebum, and dead skin cells directly against your scalp. The weight of this mass begins to pull constantly on the hair follicles, causing chronic tension headaches and micro tears in the skin. But right around the 3-year mark, something unexpected happens to your body. introducing a completely new set of psychological stakes. Up until this point, you have been dealing with physical inconveniences, but now, the experiment begins to alter your brain chemistry. Humans are fundamentally social creatures, and our brains are hardwired to read the grooming habits of others as a sign of health and safety. As your physical appearance deviates drastically from the norm, you begin to experience a profound sense of social isolation. People look away. They step back in elevators. This subtle, constant rejection triggers the amygdala, the brain's threat detection center, flooding your system with cortisol. You are not just carrying physical weight anymore. You are carrying a crushing psychological burden. To make matters worse, your sense of touch is being fundamentally rewritten. The human hand is one of the most advanced sensory tools in nature, packed with thousands of mechanoreceptors that send data to the brain about texture, temperature, and pressure. With your fingernails curled tightly into your palms, you lose this data stream. Your brain experiences a form of sensory deprivation. You can no longer feel the texture of a loved one's hand, the cold metal of a coin, or the warmth of a cup of coffee. You are effectively wearing permanent, clumsy gloves made of your own dead cells, numbing your connection to the physical world. The deeper science behind why this happens comes down to a brilliant evolutionary design that we have accidentally disrupted. Your hair follicles operate on a very specific genetic timer called the hair growth cycle. It consists of three distinct phases: anagen, catagen, and telogen. The anagen phase is the active growth period, and for the hair on your head, this phase lasts anywhere from 2 to 7 years. This is why your hair cannot grow infinitely to your feet. Eventually, the follicle hits its genetic limit, stops growing, sheds the hair, and rests before starting over. Imagine your scalp as a garden where every plant has a specific lifespan. If you never cut your hair, it will eventually hit a maximum terminal length, usually around 3 to 4 feet, depending on your genetics. However, because you are not washing or combing it, those shed hairs cannot escape the trap of the mat. They stay locked inside the dense matrix of your hair, adding weight and volume year after year, even though they are no longer attached to your head. Your nails, on the other hand, do not have a resting phase. They are an unstoppable locomotive. They will continue to grow for as long as you are alive, fueled by the blood flow at the base of your nail matrix. The only thing that limits their length in nature is friction and breakage. In a world without clippers, your nails would eventually become so long and brittle that the sheer mechanics of daily life would cause them to snap. But these would not be clean cuts. They would break deep into the living nail bed, causing excruciating pain and exposing the bone underneath to immediate infection. If you let this experiment run to its absolute limit, the consequences move from painful to life-threatening. The physical reality of your hands would render you entirely dependent on others. You could no longer cook for yourself, clean yourself, or maintain basic hygiene. The chronic infections under your nails and on your inflamed scalp would overwhelm your immune system. What began as a simple decision to reject a cosmetic chore ends up degrading your mobility, your independence, and your mental health. This thought experiment forces us to confront a strange philosophical truth about the human condition. We view our tools, our technology, and our societies as things separate from our biological bodies. But the reality is that the human body evolved with the expectation of culture. We are one of the few species on Earth that requires artificial intervention just to survive our own biological growth. Our ancestors invented sharp stone tools hundreds of thousands of years ago, long before modern scissors or clippers existed. We have been cutting, trimming, and managing our bodies for almost as long as we have been human. When you look at a pair of nail clippers or a pair of scissors, you are not just looking at a tool for vanity, you are looking at an essential, external organ. Without these simple pieces of steel, our own protective proteins would slowly turn against us, wrapping us in a cocoon of our own making. It makes you wonder what other invisible loops of modern behavior are keeping us sane, functional, and connected to reality, and how quickly we would unravel if we simply chose to stop.